The American media landscape began its true decline in the 80s under Ronald Reagan. At the time, the Federal Communications Commission was supposed to defend the interests of the public, but through both Republican and Democratic administration reforms of the last 25 years, it has created a consolidation into a cluster of fewer than 10 companies.
Starting with Ronald Reagan, the holy grail of deregulation has been sold to the public.
Once the Reagan administration was done, there were more rules, but they called it deregulation.
And harnessing the public into a culture of consumerism and profit. These companies have renounced their roles as guardians of the balance of power, abandoning information and investigation to advocate a journalism based on sensationalism, patriotism, and speculation.
The public support was created by connecting Saddam Hussein to those fears of terrorism. The fear generated by 9/11 has to be transferred to Iraq. That is, the American people have to learn to be as afraid of Saddam Hussein as they are of Osama bin Laden.
Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld set up a small intelligence office in the Pentagon to create the rationales for the already planned attack on Iraq. She witnessed how the Office of Special Plans issued talking points about Iraq, allegedly based on intelligence.
You could find bits and pieces of fact throughout, crafted to convince someone.
Liberation of Iraq is a crucial advance in the campaign against terror. We've removed an ally of Al-Qaeda.
A year later, feigns his surprise. I don't know why everybody thinks that.
We've had no evidence that Saddam Hussein was involved with the September the 11th.
I worked in a place where they concentrated on preparing this storyline.
It wasn't a failure of intelligence, it was the manipulation of intelligence to achieve a political goal.
It's day 4 of the Bush team's full-court press, giving speech after speech after speech.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
And if he does not disarm, the United States of America will lead a coalition and disarm him in the name of peace.
These things were not based on intelligence that we saw, that everyone saw. They were based on a very selective reading of the intelligence and then a creative packaging.
Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax.
These guys should be brought up on charges. There should be an investigation about whether these guys should be allowed to serve our country anymore.
Their policy depends on deception and secrecy. Even dictatorships have taken great efforts, always to disguise what they're doing and why they're doing it to their own people.
This banalization of information and culture into mere financial markets has brought about the birth of an alternative media and fostered ordinary citizens' participation in society. Recently, this counter-movement has focused on 2 immediate threats to its own ideals, that is, the reality and complexity of the war in Iraq, but also the harmful effects of commercial media on news and democracy.
15 years ago, 50 companies ran the media. Today, 5 to 7.
They're using the national treasure that is the communications highway. They have a responsibility to bring out the full diversity of views. Our profession, journalism, is the only one explicitly protected by the U.S. Constitution because we're supposed to be the check and balance on government. We're not supposed to be a megaphone for those in power.
The question that the editors and the producers asked changed from what should we report that we think it's important for our audience to know to what do we think our audience wants to see. It's an hour that's broken up into a series of blocks that are really about delivering an audience to a set of advertising. It's very hard to sustain anything that is a continuing intellectual narrative.
The subtext of everything on our commercial media is shut up and shop. Become a spectator. Don't interact with the media, with political life. Be a subject of society, not an activist in society. Don't be a citizen, but be a consumer.
In their vital quest for identity, they have become active participants in society.
Put up a sign. Simplest thing in the world. And I call this freeway blogging, which is like keeping a diary or a commentary on politics in the news on the internet. When the news changes, I make a different sign. This country was based on the notion that anybody can say politically whatever they want to as many people as they want. I just got so pissed off because like the whole lead up to the war on TV, it's like we're marching to war. You know, I'm watching the world start to hate and fear America. Soon we'll have 6 billion enemies. You know, for some oil, then it's my job. I have to speak up. I have to say, you know, this is bullshit. We don't speak anymore. We watch TV. There's no dialogue really anymore. The only dialogue is between the people who are on TV.
The alternative media will join in the struggle and serve as a megaphone for their demands.
The major network news hopefully have been shaken up into realizing the poor job they did in questioning the administration and keeping the country informed of the real facts.
People have been forced to do their own homework on what a democracy is based on. It's based on an informed public, and if you don't have an informed public, then you can't have a healthy democracy.
There are some people in the independent media movement who think the mainstream is just not reformable.
When the media acts as a conveyor belt for the lies of the administration, in a time of war, in a time of invasion and occupation, those lies take lives.
William Randolph Hearst said, you know, you give me a war, you give me the pictures and I'll give you a war.
At the same time, as there's this massive disjunction between the complexity of the world and the kind of attention that television and the medium pays to it.
Once you see how much stuff is out there that, you know, the average person who goes home every day and watches television is not going to be exposed to, it bothers you and it inspires you to try and get that information out to these people.
The people that can control and manage the perception, it's a perception and perceive that everything's okay here, that there's no problems here. They don't want people to know that there's people here that they're going hungry, don't have enough to eat, that there's people sleeping in the streets, you know, that people can't get a job here.
Our textbooks keep people ignorant, for instance, of the foreign policy of the United States. If our history books told young people the history of American foreign policy, they could never believe the president when he says, we are going to war for democracy or liberty. Aggressiveness abroad and moderation in helping people at home.
We are going to have to confront our media ghettoization and the effect it has even on our ability to have these basic conversations. But I think there's such a gulf between what people who are plugged into these alternative networks know and what mainstream America knows, that you almost lose your ability to speak to each other. The censorship has created a market for truth.
The key thing is don't be inhaling, don't be ingesting.
Stay inside, don't drink or eat anything.
The incredible story unfolds as ex-Fox News employees tell all.
There was nothing covert about the way the managing editors in New York or Washington operated. They made it perfectly clear what they expected from us.
Robert Greenwald guides us into an uncompromising look at one of the most scandalous news sources in our time.
Understand that this is an adjunct of the Republican Party. There is no journalism at the Fox News Channel.
Outfoxed.
Let's protect our civil liberties, our right to free speech.
So I think that's where that's where the panic starts, through the media coverage, through newspaper coverage, television coverage.
And the new phenomenon of the never-ending story, whether there was a pattern in the way stories are covered and then dropped.
In many ways, we have a frighteningly weak democracy.
We have more instant access to information. That does not necessarily mean we're better informed.
Dr. Goebbels said once, what you want in a media system, and he meant the Nazi media system, is ostensible diversity that conceals an actual uniformity.
There is an illusion of choice that's maintained when you can have 100 channels on your cable system. Well, the owners are you know, a handful, 5, 6 different companies.
Why does the average American today work longer hours for low wages than was the case 25 years ago?
Has the mainstream media become an anti-democratic force in the United States?
People's power of forgetting is enormous. If it's just a spectacle, you know, if it's just a bunch of razzle-dazzle and bullshit, people will naturally, you know, forget about it in a couple of days.
Put the death tax on the road to extinction. The death tax is a bad tax.
We grant these monopoly rights to TV stations, They don't pay a penny to the people for getting these monopoly rights. Then they turn around and sell time on the public property.